Women's Civil Rights Documentary by Gabby Dominguez and Bacchus. The Gender Gap. During World War II, the National Labor Board encouraged employers to make pay equal for women taking over men in the war's jobs. However, once the war ended, women often lost jobs once men came back to claim them. In the 1960s, women were hired for lesser elite jobs than men. In Help Wanted ads, more desired jobs called for men only. However, the Equal Pay Act of 1963 caused women to be able to have equal pay without a prejudice against their sex. Women earned 59% of the wages men earned in 1963. In 2012, they earned 80.9% of men's wages, an improvement of about half a penny per dollar earned every year. Family and Medical Leave Act. The Family and Medical Leave Act allows employees for 12 weeks due to a medical or familial reason. These reasons pertain to the birth of a child and to care for the newborn within 1 year of birth, and the adoption of a child. This also pertains to any severe health issue or to care for one with a severe health issue. In 1993, this law also pertained to the military. This law is important for women should they feel not equipped to work before or after the birth of their baby. Sexual harassment. The law against sexual harassment is stated in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The law applies to employment agencies and to labor organizations as well as to the federal government. It is viewed as a form of sex discrimination. The harasser's conduct must be unwelcome in the situation, and it can come from a boss, a coworker, or even someone not working for the employer. Someone harassed has every right to file a complaint. Comparable worth. The doctrine of comparable worth is an effort to stop unequal pay for workplaces with a history of sex-segregated jobs. Comparable worth makes it fair for a woman to have the same pay as a man if her job entails the same amount of skills as that of a male electrician. The Equal Pay Act and many court decisions on pay equity revolve around the requirement that the work being compared be equal work. People against the doctrine say that equal work is not properly judged. However, the doctrine has earned women a more equal pay. Equal opportunity. In 1961, John F. Kennedy first used equal opportunity by instructing federal contractors to take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are treated equally without regard to race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. He also created the Committee on Equal Employment Opportunity. In 1965, women were allowed to have equal opportunity as well as men due to President Johnson. In 1971, Order No. 4 was revised to include women in equal opportunity. Also, in 1987, women and minorities were found to be severely underrepresented in choosing qualified candidates. Equal Pay Act of 1963. In 1963, during the time President Kennedy was in office, women were earning 59 cents of the dollar that men were earning. Thus, the Equal Pay Act was signed in 1963 that requires that men and women be given equal pay for equal work in the same establishment. The act is strictly based on whether the job takes the same amount of work and/or risk, even though the jobs may be different. Although a great concept, today, women still earn about 81 cents to a dollar that men make, sometimes even less for Latinas and African American women. Title IX of 1972. Title IX of 1972 was signed in the federal government on June 23, 1972. The law is a comprehensive federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in any federal-funded education program or activity. The point of the law is to restrict government from using money to encourage sex discrimination and help keep those practices from happening. The law applies to all federally funded educational programs as well as a program supported by the recipient of federal financial assistance. This law limits sex discrimination allowed in educational settings primarily. Equal Rights Amendment of 1973. The Equal Rights Amendment was passed after the 19th Amendment, which gives women the right to vote. The Equal Rights Amendment took 7 years to pass. The amendment would guarantee that the rights affirmed by the U.S. Constitution are to be held equally by all citizens without regards to sex. The amendment allows there to be no tolerance for sex discrimination in the Constitution. Rosker versus Goldberg. The Military Selective Service Act is being accused of violating the Equal Protection Clause of the Fifth Amendment. The Military Selective Service Act is allowed to select men if a military draft is needed, but women are not required to register. The federal government may classify on the basis of race, but only when there is an important government interest and the means are substantially related in their interest. This allows people to question if the federal government allowed to only require males to register but not women. United States versus Virginia. The Virginia Military Institute was the only single-sex school in Virginia that was designed to train male leaders of the future. The school does this by adversative method. This means that physical rigor, mental stress, absolute equality of treatment, and absence of privacy is emphasized. The school argued that if they let women into the school, they would have to alter the original adversative method. The state then established the Virginia Women's Institute for Leadership. It's similar to the Virginia Military Institute, but has less courses and does not have the adversative method. Gender-based classifications of the government can be defended only by exceedingly persuasive justifications. The state must show that its classification serves important governmental objectives and that the means employed are substantially related to those objectives. Craig versus Boren. The state of Oklahoma required different drinking ages for men and women. The state of Oklahoma prohibited the sale of non-intoxicating 3.2% alcohol beer to men under the age of 21 and women under the age of 18. This statute could violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Seneca Falls. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott gathered in Seneca Falls, New York to have the first women's rights convention in American history. Although the convention was hastily organized and hardly publicized, over 300 men and women came to Seneca Falls, New York to protest the mistreatment of women in social, economic, political, and religious life. Women demanded to be granted the rights and privileges that men have, like the right to vote. Now, women have been fighting for their rights for more than 200 years. Women have come a long way, having achieved huge success in regards to rights to education, property, family planning, reproduction, and voting. Women are still fighting today against discrimination, against being promoted into higher positions, also called the issue of the glass ceiling. Women are still continuing to push to be seen as equals in the eyes of men. The 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment grants women the right to vote. Getting this amendment approved has been a strenuous fight for women over the years. This fight includes lectures, writings, lobbying, and practiced disobedience. Militant suffragists use tactics such as parades, silent vigils, and hunger strikes. Often supporters met fierce resistance. Opponents heckled, jailed, and sometimes physically abused them. On May 21, 1919, the House of Representatives passed the 19th Amendment, and 2 weeks later, the Senate followed. The amendment passed its final hurdle on August 26, 1920, changing the face of the American electorate forever.